Oh, stop. It was doing that kind of scrolly, buffery thing. I'm thinking, stop it. Don't you know it's midday? Don't you know it's time for the midday show? We need to be here. We need to be doing this. And we've got some really couple of fantastic guests for you today, together, not separately, not two different guests about two different subjects. It's going to be a challenging conversation today, but I think a necessary one. And it will be insightful and interesting and hopefully helpful if you're experiencing something along these lines or maybe know someone that is. Have you heard of this book? It's called Living with the Dominator by Pat Craven. It's something called the Freedom Program, which we're going to be talking about quite a lot on the show. And it's something that's interested me for a while, not because I've got some sort of maudlin interest, but I heard so many stories about domestic abuse and survivors on it. Mainly the stories I heard are male onto female, but it does work the other way around as well, just to be clear. It very much does. And I've understood recently that the other way around is actually much more common than we would think. And I'm very happy to be correct on any of these statistics when I bring my guests on. But I did learn that relatively recently from a pretty good source, but I will double check that with straight from the horse's mouth, as it were, when we bring our guests on. And it bugs me. And it annoys me, and I want to know why, and I want to understand it, and I want to help raise awareness of it. And the magic of these shows is, of course, they're being recorded. So if somebody finds the replay of this on YouTube, I mean, where are we today? 3rd of July, is it? Where's it the 2nd? 3rd of July, 2024. You might be watching this in July 2034. And if it helps you take the first step into frankly being happier and being out of this situation, then I feel that's worth it, even if it's just one person that experiences that. But let's welcome our guests from the Sutton Women's Centre. Hello. We have got the lovely Kerry Flynn. Now, Kerry is the one on the right of the screen, and Lizette Barton-White on the left. Hello, Kerry and Lizette. How are you?
Hiya, it's Lizanne. I've got a Z in the middle.
Did I say Lizette?
You did.
Right, I'm going to do that again. So let's bring our guests on. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lizanne Barton-White and Kerry Flynn from the Sutton Women's Centre. Seamless. Nobody will notice that. Nobody will. You know what's happening? It's scrolling across the bottom of my screen and the Z just disappeared, and I had to make that snap decision and take a guess, and I got the wrong one. Anyway, wonderful. But seriously, lovely to have you on, and thanks for coming on at short notice today as well, because I know we've only arranged this in the last 24 hours, and thank you to Nadia for setting this up. So welcome to the show. Quite a difficult topic to talk about today. We've had a little chat off air, and I know I can maybe just asking you to share your stories first of all. What brings you here? I don't mean here to this show, but here to this point in your life. What brings you here?
What brings us here? Okay, so I am a survivor of domestic abuse, right. And I joined Sutton Women's Centre as a service user in 2014. I went through the doors because I was experiencing domestic abuse, and I was feeling really depressed. I was in a really dark place, and I was lucky enough to be offered a place on the Freedom Program, which we will talk about, and it changed my life. Not only did, it changed my life. And before that, I was in sales. Now I wake up every day and I have the best job in the world. So I support women that have experienced domestic abuse. I've now trained to become a counsellor, also an IDFA, which is an independent domestic violence advocate, and facilitating the programs. And I now lead on the domestic abuse programs for Sutton Women's Centre. So it's been a huge journey.
I mean, I'm not making light of the journey, because I'm sure it wasn't an easy one. And the best journeys, or the biggest journeys, I should say, always start in the dark place, don't they? And there's little glimmers of light, and then the light gets bigger and stronger, and then eventually, it's a phrase I use quite a lot on this show, you turn the healing corner when you're able to put your work out to help other people, which is what you're doing now. That's what I said before I brought you on. If somebody is watching this video, just even that opening gambit from you will give them hope immediately. Look, this is a real person. This isn't a person in a white coat that studied theory and is trying to teach it to other people. This is real. This happened, and you're living proof that it is possible. So, you know, we've done some good already. We've only been going for 5 minutes now. Lizanne, how about you?
So my story is quite similar to Kerry's. So I had been living with domestic abuse for over 20 years, and I had a breakdown. So I ended up coming to the Women's Centre. I was referred here. I came to the Women's Centre and I came to the Freedom Programme, and I came back and I came back and I came back, and they welcomed me with open arms every time. I also then at the same time had counselling at the Women's Centre for a year, and really it rebuilt me and it put me back together. I've then done my training and now I deliver the Freedom Programme alongside Kerry, and I've also trained to be a counsellor and I'm also trained IDVA. So our journeys have been quite parallel, but you know, I sort of found my place that I belong and I found myself again just from coming to the Women's Centre.
And I think that's the magic of it, that the often used and sometimes quite cliched phrase, but cliched in a good way, of I found myself, because we're so, when we go through anything vaguely traumatic, it's like we're fragmented, it's like we're shattered, and it's like bringing back these little fragmented pieces and putting it back together bit by bit by bit. And I believe, and listen, anything I say, correct me if I'm wrong, correct me 100%. I believe that basically the first stage is to be allowed to feel what you feel. You don't have to have the masks on. You've got a safe space, rather than saying, "Oh, I'm all grown up. I should be able to deal with this." Should is a deadly word. You know, no, actually, I bloody well do feel this way. You need the safe space to be able to feel and process what you feel, which then gives you space around it to be able to start, you know, reintegrating these wounded parts of ourselves. Is that a fairly accurate assessment? Would you say?
I think it's a really hard thing to admit that you're not okay.
Well, it is. I think we're all conditioned to think that once we get over a certain age, you know, magically 18, you know, ding, we're all adults and then can deal with anything that the world throws at us. But that certainly wasn't my experience 4 years ago when I went through a difficult time. Not at all. And part of what helped me or hindered my healing was thinking that I should have it all together and expecting myself. Maybe it's more of a guy thing. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But thinking I should have it all together. I'm an adult. I should be able to deal with this, but I still feel this way. So that was causing me quite a lot of shame. And you know, shame towards yourself for any reason is toxic, particularly if it's through domestic abuse, when it's not even your shame. It just feels like it because you've probably been gaslit to high heaven, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And it's a barrier for support as well when you feel the shame.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, let's get the message out loud and clear. It's perfectly okay to reach out for support, even if you're not sure you need support. Maybe you just need support to see if you need support or not, and that's fine. So we've got a bunch of numbers here, which are going to be rotating on the screen throughout the show. If anyone is affected by anything they see on the show and see in here today, there's the Sutton Women's Centre. This is the localised one where they can get in touch with you, fine folks. There is a men's advice line as well, because it's not always male onto female, is it? It does work the other way around. And I understand that the statistics are higher than most people would believe on that. I think most people think it's about 99.1%, but it's something like 70-30, I heard. Yes. Is that accurate in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about 70-30. But what we do know is domestic abuse is a gendered crime. The majority of the violent crimes happen to women. Yes. It's not to say that men don't experience it, absolutely do, and they need support in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
One in 4 women and 1 in 6 men experience abuse, but predominantly the perpetrators are still male.
Yeah, 70%. Yeah, I know it's the majority. I just knew that the statistics were, it's not 99%, 1% that I'd heard. I just wanted to point out it was greater than most people, but still the majority is male on female, certainly. And the National Domestic Abuse Hotline is this, 0808 2000 247. That's 0808 2000 247. So I'd love to learn a bit about the Freedom Programme. It was my girlfriend Nadia recommended you to me because she's a big fan of what goes on at the Sutton Women's Centre, and she was raving about it. And I seem to have had an awful lot of conversations with women one way or another over the years, and they've been, and I suppose why wouldn't I have, because if the statistics are that high, 1 in 4, you say, and that can be physical or mental. Does that count for all kinds of abuse? I mean, there's all kinds of abuse, isn't there? Physical, mental, sexual, financial. But maybe start by saying some of the kinds of abuse that go on, so we people watching and listening feel that we're covering everybody.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So, yeah, as you say, domestic abuse can be physical. It can also coercive control. Now it's become a law. It's become a crime, actually. It's 2015.
Yes, it
and
has.
coercive control is really, it's about a set of rigid rules that the perpetrator has. And fear is at the heart of coercive control. And there's consequences for not meeting those rules. And 95 out of 100 women who experience domestic abuse experience coercive control. And it crosses social space as well. And what we mean by that is the perpetrator doesn't have to be physically with them to still control them. So, for instance, one of the rigid rules might be that they expect their dinner on the table at 5:30 when they get in from work. So, which is, for a happy family, that's fine if the mother's at home doing that. But if that wasn't put on the table, then there would be a consequence. So for that woman, they might be picking the children up from school, and their focus is on making sure that dinner is on the table. Not only is that dinner on the table, the children's homework must be done. The children should be ready for bed. So she's got all of that to contend with. That's what we mean by crossing social space, because he's not even got home yet. He's not even put the key in the door. But her whole day, in fact, her whole week, has been controlled by that.
So a lot of it is it's psychological, isn't it? I mean, I heard the phrase ages ago, and I'm not entirely sure I agree with it, but I heard the phrase ages ago that psychological is worse than physical, because physical wounds heal, but psychological is a lot harder. Now the jury's out for me on that one, because I think physical abuse is awful, but just to have that kind of running as a tape in the back of your mind, I've got to get this done, or there'll be some punishment, there'll be some sanction, I'll be in trouble. I mean, it breeds people pleasing, and you're right. It's all fear based, isn't it? And why has it taken so long for this to become a law? I know coercive control is hard to prove, but I mean, judging by the amount of it that goes on, 2015, that's only 9 years in the history of humanity. Yeah. That ain't long.
It's not
really?
long, no.
Is it? I mean, why do you think? Let's ask you, Lisanne, or either of you, why is it taking so long for this to get on the books, do you think? I've got a theory, which I'll come on to in a minute, but why do you think?
Oh, I think it's just taken so long. I mean, it's being able to prove it, isn't it, as well? It's a really hard thing.
It's hard to prove, isn't it?
Yeah. And that really is the crux of it.
See,
and it's hard to understand that you're experiencing it as well, because it becomes your normal.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. If negativity and gaslighting, which I'll come on to in a minute, become the norm, it's hard to see the forest for the trees. It's just you'll be forgiven for thinking that all of life and all relationships were like that. Therefore, might as well suck it up, buttercup, because this is just the way life is. So I think the first step is realizing, actually, no, there are other options, and there's really good ones. You're certainly not stuck in that, and with that safe space and support, you can reach where you wonderful women are now, and be in the place of helping other people, which is fantastic. Gaslighting, for the benefit of anyone watching that's not sure what it means, it's based on an old film called Gaslight, isn't it? Are you familiar with the film? Yes. Yeah, where the husband was just adjusting the pictures in the room and saying, well, I didn't do that, you must, making her think that she'd done something wrong and slowly driving her mad. It's kind of the psychological version of that, making the other person think they're always wrong, no matter what. Therefore, they're always playing catch up with you. And again, it's a form of coercive control. And I feel my blood boiling, and I feel myself getting angry even talking about it, because I hate that with an absolute passion. But that's gaslighting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I hate about it is this word gaslighting has been thrown around, and it's kind of lost its power a little bit as well. But it's extremely exhausting to be gaslit, and you don't know your own self. You're
constantly questioning everything, and just don't know whether even your own truth is the truth anymore.
Yeah.
I think possibly that's the greatest crime, isn't it? Being forced to question yourself and feeling that you're the one in the wrong. And I'm relating it back to my own experience, and nobody was, a little bit, I wasn't really being gaslit terribly, certainly not to the degree that you were, but it did cause me to constantly doubt and dislike myself. And if you can't trust yourself, because all personal development, all self-love, all the good things start with yourself. But if yourself is sort of fragmented all over the place, and that's been orchestrated by the little Machiavellian puppet master over here, it's not a good starting point, is it? And it's very, very difficult to get started. My other theory about why it's taken so long, and I've read this book, or certainly quite a lot of it, Living with the Dominator, which I know you're familiar with, written by Pat Craven, illustrated by Jackie Fleming. And it's a book about the Freedom Program, and I devoured it. And what really surprised me, what really, really made my jaw drop, was the behaviors that are described that men, and quite a lot of them, practice in this book. They don't even think there's anything wrong with that. Mm-hmm. They think that's just the way men should behave. Mm-hmm. And so it's some really bad stuff as well. Really bad stuff. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm sort of more enlightened than the average man. My friends would tell you not, but I wouldn't dream that any of the behaviors in here are ways that men should behave under any circumstances, ever. But why do so many men think this is all right? Help me understand that.
And that's part of the program. It's our belief systems. Our beliefs are what drive our behaviour, and it's where these belief systems, where they start, and they do start from childhood and society, media. It's all there,
culture down the pub, magazines, the media, adverts on TV.
So all the social and cultural influences we've got, and I agree with you, are just playing into this, shall we say, patriarchal narrative. Yes. Yeah, very much so. I mean, and there's the different types of controller. Or they've got the dominator. I'm just reading the introduction. You've got the bully, the bad father, the head worker, the jailer, the sexual controller, the king of the castle, the liar, the persuader. So there's lots of flavors of abuse and coercive control, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And on the program, we'll focus on one aspect each week and really sort of drill down. So when you think of a bully, everyone thinks of a bully as someone being like physically, bullying, shouting at you. But also a bully will use things like stonewalling and silent treatment. And you don't realise that is actually a bullying tactic. And it's essentially
it's more passive aggressive, isn't it? But it's still there.
Yeah.
I liked this in the book, and it's I don't know if you can see this on screen, but it's a diagram.
Oh yes,
of all the different types of control that I just mentioned, and this is what made my jaw drop open. It's like, oh my god, and they think that's all right. They think that's all right. They think that's all right. And it just articulates all the different styles and the way, say, the sexual controller behaves or the king of the castle behaves. But then 2 pages later, there's the good guy, and that says not saying that we're a saint, okay, because no one's that, but just a decent but just a decent human being, and it contrasts the opposite of what the controller's like. And I'm happy to report, girls, I'm 99% this. Although I did sulk for half a day about a month ago about something, but apart from that one bit, which was quite a relief to me. So no one's saying that this is not some sort of women against men thing, trying to get men to be perfect. Not at all. We're all human and we've all got our imperfections and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little more about this program. How many people do you get coming to you? What's the most common form of abuse you deal with? Tell us more. I've talked a lot. I'm going to throw the forum over to you now and just really let you share, and I'll just jump in if I want to qualify something. Okay. So your forum, girls, go for it.
Thank you. So at the moment, we're running 4 programs a week. So on average, we book about 25 on the program, and it sort of whittles down to around 20. So I say between 80 to 100 women on the programs at the moment, and we run the programs 3 times a year as well. And we're already subscribed for our next group, which starts in September. So there's already a waiting list. So it's huge. And in Sutton, it's around 1,900 women a year that experience domestic abuse. So it's quite high. So yeah, we
1,900 a year.
Yeah, just under 2,000.
Sutton's not that big a town, really, is it? Not really.
No. We do have quite a lot of repeat perpetrators in Sutton, and we're always trying to work out what it is. But I think with Sutton, once you live here, people don't tend to move. So
Yeah,
perpetrators
and
do.
I think it's also quite often it's the woman that's moved away to be
Yeah.
kept safe. So she leaves the area and the perpetrators stay. And so they just move on to the next
the
woman.
next person.
If someone is in immediate danger, short of calling 999,
Yeah.
what else can they do just for that first step, just to get the hell out of Dodge if necessary?
Yeah. So what we would say, they would need to speak to an IDFA, which is an independent domestic violence advocate. So in Sutton, we have something called the Onstop Shop, and other boroughs have them as well. So you'd go along, you'd speak to an IDFA, and they do like a risk assessment on you. And then there'll be services there. There'll be someone from emergency housing. There'll be a solicitor. Everything that you might need is all there for you, just to help you if you need to flee immediately. It depends on obviously on the risk factors. But that's what I would recommend, is to see an IDFA.
And some of the websites are very clever. I've been on these websites, and there's a leave the website. And this is how controlling people can be. There's an emergency button to press, and it will just go back to Google search. There's no cookies stored in the phone or no history or anything like that. I mean, it's brilliant technology, but I think, Christ, is this necessary? You know. We've got some comments coming in, and I have to say there's a lot of love coming in for you ladies. We have a great audience here, so I'm going to introduce you to some of them. This is Dave Sleets, and he's does an awful lot of work in the psychiatric community. Greetings, one and all. What a great opportunity to announce Sutton Women's Centre have been nominated for an APA Ethical and Psychological Contribution Award for their work. The team will be reaching formally in the coming days. So there you go. Graham Pack, who is normally our resident comedian, but I don't, and we spend most of the time barracking each other on this show, but he's behaving himself today. Fair question. Are there any numbers for gay and lesbian relationship abuse, or is it normally from the opposite sex?
We've got some statistics. We were going to do a little quiz with you, actually, on some statistics. Absolutely. So,
well, I'll tell you what, we go through the comments, then we do that quiz. I'd like that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Liz Saul, who's also a presenter on the show, kudos to these ladies. Programs and centres such as these are so important for all women, but especially from the ethnic minorities who have added brules to follow. And I'm just going to explain the word brules if you've not heard it before. It's a sort of world that's banded around in personal development. And it's a coined word for bullshit rules, brules, basically. So it could be rules from your partner, you know, you can't go out dressed like that. That's probably a brule. Do you know what I mean? Things like that, or from religion. They've got quite a few fair few rules, and just arbitrary rules that you think about it. Think, well, why is that a rule? It's not a rule. It's not a rule. It's just human made. That's a brule, a bullshit rule. Consider that abuse in the home was only made illegal in 1976. That's unbelievable. That is absolute, and even that took decades. To bring about. So what was the attitude before that? Like, you can't abuse someone out the home, but what a man, and probably a man, does behind closed doors, well, that's his business. Man's home is his castle and all that. Was it that?
Yeah. There was actually a City of London bylaw in 1895, and it actually said that wife beating is prohibited between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Not because it wasn't okay, but because it disrupted the neighbours.
You know where the phrase rule of thumb comes from, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
I'll let you explain that one.
So rule of thumb, it come from a law that it was okay to beat your wife with a stick as long as it wasn't thicker than your thumb.
Well, that makes it all right, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Graham Pack, the conviction rates for rape are very low as it's hard to prove. Yeah, they're shockingly low. It's not like 2%, isn't it? Is it the same for coercive control? Good question, Graham.
I think now there's been a lot of knowledge more on coercive control. It's getting a little bit easier, but again, yes, it is, because a lot of it is behind closed doors. If there's financial control involved, then they can, obviously there's evidence there, if there's records and things like that, and
because to get a conviction, you're going to need evidence, you're going to need physical proof, aren't you? So if someone does feel they're being coercively controlled, what's the best thing to do? Keep a diary, something like that.
Absolutely, we recommend that all the time. There is a great app called Bright
Sky UK.
Yeah,
so that appears on your mobile. You can download it onto your phone, and then
what's it called?
Bright Sky UK.
I'm going to pop that on the screen. Go on, carry on.
So you can use it. It looks like a weather app on your phone, and you can actually use it to download evidence. So you can record voice messages, phone calls, you can upload pictures, you can screen grab stuff, and it's all saved up in the cloud. So if anybody looked at your phone, unless they tapped on this app in a certain place, they would never know it's a domestic abuse app.
And it looks like a weather app.
It looks like the weather app, yeah, and you can call the police
Very
straight
clever.
from that app as well.
I tell you what, much as I hate the subject we're talking about, I think the technology is incredible, isn't it? I mean, that
Amazing.
really, just sad that we need it.
Yeah.
Liz, currently is a news story. Now, I've heard this term before, cuckooing. Have you heard of this? It's a, yeah, of course you have, sorry. Type of exploitation where individuals lose control of their home after being befriended and groomed by criminal gangs. I mean, you would get coercive control in the criminal world. Of course you would. That's probably what it's based on. It's all based on fear, I suppose, isn't it? Liz, you mentioned it happened to men too, to a lesser degree. I have two male friends that found themselves previously in this situation, and they were embarrassed to start with because of a male belief they should be kind and protective, not being abused themselves. And Liz also says until the 1980s, a woman couldn't easily, if at all, get a mortgage in this country. Well, we've still got the patriarchal hangover. I think it's moving in the right direction, albeit bloody slowly. Yeah. But
also touching on that, also just another one in 1984. Before 1984, after 1984, women could spend their money in English pubs without being refused service.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a shocking one, isn't it?
I'd just like to say as well, Kerry was talking about the one-stop shop earlier for women, but we do actually have a one-stop shop for male survivors as well.
Oh, great. Okay.
So that is also running as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I'll put your number up. So I wasn't laughing at that. I'm just laughing at the absurdity of it. That some of these things that people used to accept as the norm, and some people still do today. To me, it's laughable, which is why I'm just like, what planet is this? What? You know, and if it wasn't tragic, it would be funny, but you know what I mean? And 1984, that's really recent, relatively speaking. You were going to do a little quiz with statistics.
Yeah.
Come on, try me out on this. I'll be.
Yeah, let's do
it. Okay. So, on average, how often do the police receive a call about DA? Is it every 30 seconds, every 1 minute, or every 3 minutes?
Every 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's actually 41% of all violent crimes is domestic abuse.
Wow.
So how much does DA cost the health service every year? 1 billion, 1.7 billion, or 2.3 billion?
I'm going to go for the highest one, 2.3.
Yeah, it is the highest one. In the year ending March 2022, how many women experienced DA in the previous 12 months? Was it 700,000, 1 million, or 1.7 million?
Again, I'm going to go for the highest.
Yeah, it is, again, the highest one. Women with disabilities are how many times more likely to experience domestic abuse? So it's 0.5 times more likely, 2 times more likely, or 5 times more likely?
Again, you can see a pattern forming here. I'm going for the highest.
It's actually 2 times more likely.
Oh, come on. You let me, come on.
Yeah, it's a curveball for you.
I don't win the jackpot anymore. Go on.
So how many women attempt suicide every day as a result of domestic abuse? Is it 5, 15, or 30?
30.
Yeah, it is 30 again. Yeah. And also, when we're talking about domestic abuse, it's not just partners, it can be family members as well. And we don't often talk about that. So it could be somebody experiencing it from their parents if they're over 16 as well.
Yeah,
so
carers too.
Carers, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you do hear the odd shocking story of the carer, don't you? But normally in the paper with a bit of photo evidence, something like that. But you wouldn't think about it from close families. So it's good to know there are two things that we've touched on so far, even though the statistics are awful and really, very disturbing. The good we can take from it is that, number one, wonderful resources like who I'm talking to today, do exist. And number two, there is a path out there. I think once you've been gaslit and you're feeling fragmented, you can literally just wake up and think, this is it. This is my life. This is just the way the world is. It never gets any better than this. But you two ladies are living proof that clearly that's not true. Clearly that's not true. It does get better. Walk me through I know it's a very difficult question to answer, but and everyone's story is different, but walk me through a kind of healing journey, the setbacks and successes on the way, therapies that you had, what helped, what didn't help, what you thought would help but didn't, what you thought wouldn't help but did, maybe.
I'd explain it like a roller coaster, really.
Yeah.
It's twists and turns, up, lows, highs. I always say, like, women that come on the program, I'd love to be able to take a picture of them on day one and 12 weeks later, because you can see their journey and you can see how they hold themselves. But
how much they grow.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the most important thing for a survivor is they want to be believed, and they want to, and simply just to say I believe you, and not to be judged, to be validated for how they're feeling, and to have the time that they need to heal, because like you say, everyone's journey is completely different. So on the program, the first thing we do is a group contract, because what we want to do is create a safe space for them, and creating that safe space and being in a room with other women that have experienced it. I really can't explain it. You just walk into the room and it's like you can just be yourself. If you want to cry, you can do whatever you want, and you're not judged.
Yeah.
And
I think also it's so, and this is how the perpetrator would want it, and it's the same with this or any other psychological illness or condition. It feels so isolating. You feel like you're the only one.
Absolutely.
Ever. In the history, everyone else, and particularly if you look at Facebook, everyone's having a great time apart from you. You're the only one, and it feels very, very isolating. It's not true, but it feels that way. So to be believed, to walk into another room and think, oh my God, you too, me too, to coin a phrase. It's that alone for a beginning step is a weight off your shoulders, isn't it? Thank God it's not just me. Maybe I'm not going crazy after all. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then everyone's journey is different. Some people go on and have counselling, some people don't need it, and everybody's journey is completely different. But I would explain it like a roller coaster, really, because on the program, we have some laughs on there. It's, even though it's a tough subject, we have the giggles, and and it's the women form a bond with each other, and it's like women that would never have normally meet. They're from different different backgrounds, different ages, and
different religions, different cultures.
I know, but the magic of something like this, if you're forming a bond with someone, you could call that spiritual, and that should transcend all human-made stuff, including religion, including sexuality, including skin color. It's above all of that, or it should be. If you know what I mean. And you know what? I don't think it's strange that there's laughter there. I think humor, alongside music, is one of the most healing forces that we've got. And if you can laugh at something, it becomes an awful lot less scary as well. If you can get to that point, because it makes you bigger than it, and that's a very powerful place to be. Very, very, very powerful place to be. So you're fully booked at the moment. What's the plan for the rest of the day for you?
For the rest of the day, I finish at 4, so not too bad for me. What about you?
I'm probably going to go and do a bit of self-care and go for a nice walk after. Self-care is always important. It's something we go on about all the time.
I'm glad you've touched on this, because I talk about self-care an awful lot. I always use the analogy of the one they use on the aeroplanes. You can't put your own oxygen mask on first. And I think there is another brule, if you like, in this culture of give to other people, work, juggle, particularly for women, I would have thought as well, juggle about 9 plates, do this, be perfect, be beautiful, be this, be an amazing mum, be amazing everything, and don't take any time for yourself. You just got to look good to everyone else, otherwise you're not good enough. That's the brule, and it is a brule.
We do that a lot on the Freedom Program, and we kind of explain it as like, imagine you and your family as a row of dominoes. You're the first domino. What happens if you don't take care of yourself and you fall? Everybody else follows.
It's a good way of putting it. But the point I want to make loud and clear for anyone watching, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but I don't think you're going to. you cannot care for anyone else unless you care for yourself. You have to be selfish, and I'll put it in inverted commas, enough to put yourself first. Say yes to what you want, say no to what you don't want, do things because you want to, fill your own cup, and then you've got more to offer other people, right?
I think it's been a really hard thing, actually, when you've been living in domestic abuse. You put yourself last.
Of course, you've been told
to actually focus on us is sometimes quite a hard thing to do, but it's something we really try to get the women to get involved in.
So what do you do for self-care, Lizanne?
Oh, gym, which is mostly the steam and the sauna.
I was going to say, sucker for punishment.
Not exercise, no. I like to go outside and walk. I'm all about Mother Nature. I'm a bit of an inner hippie.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
So you hug your tree.
Yeah, I do like a bit of tree hugging. So yeah, or laying with my feet up in the air on a tree is quite good and quite grounding.
Bit of forest bathing.
Yeah, and the moon and the crystals. I'm into all that. Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah. That's my bit of self-care.
Bit of university stuff. Bit of manifestation. Bit of law of attraction in there.
Yeah, put it out to the universe, and the universe will bring you what you need.
Now that's a wonderful support system, because if you believe that, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. I mean, I personally do, or I'm coming to over the year. That's the wonderful system, because if it's between you and the universe, then you don't need anyone else, and then no one can. And then if that's true, no one can control you anymore, because you don't need anything from them.
Yeah,
that's a powerful place to be, unless they think they're bigger than the universe, which some narcissists might. We'll come on to that in a minute. How about you, Kerry? What do you do
for me, it's music. I have a playlist for every emotion. I've got my angry playlist, I have my sad playlist, and I let my emotions out with my music.
So tell me, is Evanescence Bring Me to Life on your angst playlist? Because if it's not, it should be.
It's not actually. Oh, we'll add it.
It should be. You're talking to a DJ here. Let me tell you.
Okay, we'll give you some recommendations. Yeah. So for me, it's music, and for a long time, when you experience domestic abuse, you lose your identity. And I've grown up in a huge Irish family, and that's kind of our roots. And I love the music. And I've recently, I'd say over the last sort of 4 years, kind of found it again. So now I've just had enough for music again now. So that's what picks me up.
It must be delicious. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be hit over the head with a hammer to know how nice it is not to be hit over the head with a hammer. But after going through something awful like this, it must be delicious to rediscover yourself and fall back in love with yourself again and think, oh, actually, I am a worthy person.
I actually like myself now. I'm all right, actually. I'm quite funny at times. And it's definitely a journey, isn't it?
Yes. I think also on the Freedom Programme, we have a couple of weeks where we look at self-esteem and mental health as well. And that really focuses on our self-worth. And that's really important. Yeah.
Because we are all inherently worthy. It's like saying, the sun is always there, even though the clouds might be covering it up. It doesn't mean the sun isn't there or it's not doing what it should be. It's just that it's blocked. So it's more working through the blocks of the clouds, if I can use that metaphor, rather than trying to put the sun back, because that never went. Narcissism is a word that's been bandied around an awful lot. And I think, like you mentioned earlier with the word gaslighting, it's diluted it a bit. Yeah. But narcissism must play into this with perpetrators. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I've recently understood narcissism a lot better. And one thing narcissists do is try and make you think that you're the narcissist.
Absolutely. So I would say a lot of perpetrators have lots of narcissistic traits. I wouldn't say they'd all be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, because what we do know about domestic abuse is it's about power and control, where one person wants to have power and control over another. And they're very much aware of what they're doing. They're very much aware of the impact and the tactics.
Now, this is an important distinction, isn't it? Because there are some schools of thought, and I thought it for a while, that they don't really make... How can I put it? I'm trying to find the right words. I'm not trying to minimize this at all, I promise you. But
how it is. Just say it.
Okay, they don't really mean it. They're just really unaware. But then I read, oh no, they know what they're doing. And then my compassion evaporates. I'm like, well, sod them then. Go on, carry on.
I was going to say, I think the thing is that they choose to only do this to their partner. They don't go down the road and do it with their mates down the pub. They're not.
Well, this
doing
is the thing, because they're very charming to other people. They can be convivial, they can be the life and soul of the party, they can be generous, they can be understanding. In fact, at the start of the relationship, they can look like the perfect man that you've been waiting for. And then, or woman, and then, bit by bit by bit,
it's a drip effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I summing that up right? Please correct me if I'm not.
No, you are.
Yeah.
And that's how it happens. The drip effect that you don't realise, and suddenly you're in it, and that's exactly.
And then you can't see. I mean, a friend of mine went to therapy because she'd been dating someone narcissistic, and the very first question she asked the therapist, and apparently it's very common, is, "Am I a narcissist?"
Yeah, and we hear that all the time on the Freedom Programme, and we actually say to the women, the fact that you've asked shows that you're not.
Yes.
Because they've never asked. They've never.
Yeah, and you've articulated it beautifully, Kerry. The fact that you even ask means that you're not. It's a bit like if you've got OCD and you think, "Am I a bad person because I have these thoughts?" Well, no. If you were, you wouldn't ask.
Yeah.
You'd just be doing it, So it's a similar thing. So if you're watching this and thinking, "Oh, am I a narcissist?" If you're asking yourself that question, 99.9%, you're not. So don't worry about it.
And a lot of women think that they are not. They believe that their behaviour is bullying and controlling. But when you're experiencing trauma, like if you're questioning them when you're going to be home and stuff like that, it's not because you're trying to be controlling. It's because you're trying to manage the situation. And there is such a thing as reactive violence as well. So,
explain that, would you?
So reactive violence really. So some women will say, well, I started it and I threw something just to get it over and done with, and it's kind of reacting to, it's a trauma response. It's reacting to what's about to happen. And it's
a preemptive strike, essentially.
It's kind of like, so when you're in your trauma response, so for instance, fire, that's about preservation, self-preservation at all costs.
Yeah.
And when you're in a trauma response, you're not in control. It's you're in it, and how you react, if it could be fight, or it could be flight, or it could be freeze or fawn where you totally shut down. You're not in control when you're in your trauma response.
No, I noticed when I was going through my worst stress that we don't make good decisions when we're in that fight or flight. We just don't, and then we can feel ashamed of them afterwards and think, what was I doing? But it's this, I suppose, but also they've proven scientifically that the most evolved part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, loses blood supply. It shuts down when we're in trauma or fight or flight. Therefore, it's simply not online. So you're left with either the amygdala, which is the emotional bit, or the reptilian bit, which is even more primitive.
Absolutely, because it's about survival.
Exactly. When that's reversed and the prefrontal cortex is firing nicely and you feel confident and good about yourself, survival isn't even in question. It's not even on the radar. It's just a given. So there must be some.
We do a session on the Freedom Programme, but before you hit your trauma response, there are signs in your body that you're about to, so you can prevent it if you're aware of it. So
awareness again. Well, let's talk about that. Maybe you can give us a little bit about that. So if you do think you're going to do something understandable, but you might regret it afterwards, or it might not be the best response, but we've gone.
So what we do on the program, we do a body mapping exercise. So we give them an outline, and we're giving them a scenario. So say I don't know, you're sitting at home and he's phoned you, or you're receiving a text message from him. So that would trigger you hearing his voice, maybe, or
seeing his name on
the phone. What's going on in your body right now? So some women will say they get sweaty palms, or they get heart palpitations,
churning stomach.
It's different for everybody.
Typical anxiety responses, though, right?
Yeah. And what that's telling you is that you could then be entering a trauma response. But at that moment, if you can recognize what's happening to you, and you can do some some grounding techniques and things like that, you can sometimes prevent yourself going into trauma response, because a text message doesn't necessarily mean you're in immediate danger, but because you've experienced trauma, your body thinks you are in immediate danger, and it's gone straight on.
They say the body is the unconscious mind, and when I studied NLP, it's you hear people say things like, "I know logically I shouldn't be scared of thunderstorms, but I just am," and it's because there's like two levels of mind. There's the conscious mind that knows, well, it's only sound, it can't hurt me. But the unconscious mind is terrified, and they're kind of But with awareness, you can almost interrupt that pattern, I suppose.
Catching those thoughts. No.
I'm sorry?
It's catching those thoughts.
It's catching the thoughts and being aware, like you say, that a text message in the moment is not necessarily dangerous, even though the unconscious mind is just bang, react like that. Because the unconscious is reactive. It doesn't have that kind of critical factor. Wait a minute, I'm 100 miles away. This text message isn't dangerous. It can't do that. But I suppose, but equally asking someone to do that when they're in a domestic abuse situation, it's like, you know, it's not the most conducive conditions to learn a whole new psychological skill. So be easy on yourself. I would say if you're learning these things. But we talk about it a lot on this show. It's the word hyphenated, response hyphen ability. So people have more response ability in a situation, and this comes from the NLP world, where we try and expand people's maps and give them more choices, which I suppose, of course, is what you're doing in some way. And the more choices you've got, the more response ability you can access. But again, be easy with yourself, because it's, you know, these are, you know, it's a frightening situation, and you know, it takes a while to learn these skills. More comments. Graham Pack, I want to ask you about trauma bonding as well in a minute. Is there a history in the man's family that sets this off so a woman can know before getting too involved with that person? That's an interesting.
Is there a history of a man's family that sets off?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the belief systems do come from family, don't they? And how they're treated as a child, but not always, because sometimes you can act in the complete opposite. So it's really
I suppose some people would say I'm like this because of my family, and some people say because of my family I'm not like this. Getting a thumbs up from Nike Williams, who's tuned into the show. Lizzie's talking about having musical playlists. Trauma bonding, I've heard that term quite a lot. Could you explain to me what that means, please?
The way I kind of explain it is it's kind of intense.
Like Stockholm Syndrome. Is it a bit like Stockholm Syndrome?
Kind of, yeah. So what happens in a domestic abuse relationship, you have really intense, you have really high highs and you have really low lows. And what happens is your brain actually becomes addicted to the adrenaline or what you're being flooded with. That's the kind of the best way to kind of explain it, really. And if say, for instance, it's really calm and nothing's going on, you might create a bit of drama because you need that, you know, that fix, because you've become addicted to it, really. That's the best way to explain it. And it's really hard once you have a trauma bond to detach from someone as well, because you need that.
It's like a drug.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, these chemicals are brain chemicals, where you're talking your dopamines and your serotonins and all these sorts of things. They're all sorry?
Oxytocin as well is another one, and cortisol.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cortisol's the stress hormone, isn't it? Oxytocin is the so-called cuddle hormone, isn't it? Tenderness. But I suppose if you're getting a massive dose of this, then it does become, you know, in proper proportion, these chemicals are absolutely necessary. I go out and do something different, an experience I haven't had before, that's a healthy shot of dopamine. You know what I mean? I feel well-being, that's a healthy shot of serotonin, but I wouldn't take heroin to get my shot of serotonin. That you know. So how do you break from that? Is it, how do you wean yourself into, I suppose, more temporarily boring experiences? Do you have to kind of get okay with boredom? I mean, how does it work?
It's hard to break from that, but I'd say, you know, doing something therapeutic like the Freedom Program is a good way, because you can kind of recognize and sit with that uncomfortableness as well, you know. So
I think when you do the Freedom Program as well, for a lot of women, there's like a penny drop moment to go, oh, and you did that, and you did that. So, and you don't realize that you've made that trauma bond to that, but it's until you've seen it sort of spell out, that's when you can have the, oh, that's what was happening.
I mean, it's a very detailed program, the Freedom Program. Isn't it? How long does it take? If someone started to, I mean, today, how many weeks would it run for?
So it's a 12-week program.
Wow.
So we cover the Freedom Programme material, but at some women's centre, all of the facilitators are also trained counsellors and survivors.
Yeah.
So we add a few extra sessions in ourselves. So we'll talk about trauma, mental health.
Yeah.
We talk about self-esteem and stuff like that as well that we bring into it. But what the Freedom Programme is, you look at the tactics that the perpetrator might use, but then we look at the belief systems behind it, you know, why they act in the way they act. And we also look at our own belief systems and how that's tied in. So for instance, like the king of the castle is the aspect that treats you like an unpaid slave in the household. All the household chores are yours and they're in control of the money. But we look at like, where did he get them beliefs from? And also what our own belief systems are. For me personally, like, you know, growing up, my mum had a small part-time job and my dad went to work, and that's how my family life was. My mum did the housework, my dad worked, and so my belief system tied in with that. But when you're in a domestic abuse situation and there's a consequence if something doesn't get done, that's where it's different. But you know,
there's a subtle nuance here, isn't there? Like you say, I mean, imagine that was pretty common when a lot of people were growing up, but that's not abusive. That's just maybe not ideal, but just the way it kind of was back then. Yeah.
I think if it's okay with you and you're happy and your relationship is healthy, then
that's fine.
But
that's what I'm saying. But when it goes to, let's say, extreme, and it becomes king of the castle, then it crosses the line into abuse.
Yeah, if dinner's not ready when it should be for whatever reason,
there'll be a consequence.
So if my dad got home and his dinner wasn't ready, you know, all right, he didn't cook, but there wouldn't be a consequence, you know, he'll just sit and wait. But
exactly, or get his own.
He's starting to cook now, but
is he? Never too late. What's the most common one that comes to you out of these? I'll just read those again. You've got sexual controller, king of the castle, the bad father, the liar, persuader, head worker, jailer, or bully. Which is the most common that you deal with, would you say?
I would say the head worker, really, because the head worker is the gaslighting, and without sort of the gaslighting, there would be no manipulation in the first place. So I would say
the head worker, in the book here, it says puts you down, tells you you're too fat, too thin, ugly, stupid, useless, etc. And the converse, as I said, there's the good guy. The opposite of him is the confidence booster. Says you look good, values your opinions, supports your ambitions, says you're confident, and values you.
Yeah. And we actually focus quite a lot on, we call it on the programme Normal Nigel, and we also have a disclaimer that not all Nigels are normal, but we do concentrate on the more healthy side than, you know.
So we close every session.
Because a lot of the women are like, really? They think it's too good to be true. They think it's a...
No, but I mean, I can't, I mean, surely that's just what you do in a relationship. You know what I mean? Or maybe just maturity is kicking in for me. But I mean, you know, at times I think I'm right about something and I'll stand by my guns, but not at the expense of bullying somebody, if you know what I mean. But I mean, why wouldn't you?
Healthy disagreements, isn't it?
Healthy disagreements, it's I'm literally just editing a podcast before I came on air. A wonderful lady called Liz, and she says, you know, my definition of boundaries is, I can understand why you would feel that way. Me, I feel this way. That's fine. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, as sovereign beings, you know, that's absolutely fine. We can think that we want and feel that we want, as long as we're not harming anybody else. But I love the way that you've done the converse and showed the opposite of what you know, of what people can be like. And again, it says in the book, not a saint, just a decent human being. So any man watching this, you know, no one's expecting you to be a saint. And also to the women watching this saying, that's too good to be true, those men don't exist. They do. They really do. But if you're stuck in this, with this sort of, you know, before you've maybe done the freedom program, before you've had the penny drop moment, you might literally think this is the way life is. All the world is this way and all men are this way. They're not. Some are, but not all. Far from it. Far from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Far from it. It's been amazing having you both on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Before we go,
no, we're not quite done yet. Tell me more.
I just wanted to get a bit of advertising in. Not advertising, but
the shameless plug. Go for it.
Yes, shameless plug. So in Sutton, we're running domestic abuse training for anyone that lives or works in the London Borough of Sutton that wants to understand domestic abuse. It's a 2-day training course. It's free of charge, and we cover all of the topics that we've spoken about today. We cover victim blaming, we cover the media, how to support someone and what a survivor might need. It's just to raise awareness, really. And it really is to teach people to have conversations about abuse and challenge some of the, the negative attitudes and
knowing how to respond as well.
Yeah. So if anybody
what negative attitudes do you tend to come up against?
So we get a lot of whataboutery. So if we were doing it would be like, what about men, or things like that. And it's like one of the comments that we get and the questions that we get is like, well, why don't they just leave? And that's one of my biggest bugbears. Because
thank you for reminding me. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. I'd have been cross if I hadn't brought that one up. Thank you. Why? Yeah, because that's the question that everyone says. And
it's okay to ask, absolutely, but
why don't they just leave? Surely it's easy, no?
Absolutely. So, I mean, that question in itself is kind of victim blaming, and it also implies that the victim has all the power, and actually they don't. And the losses of leaving a relationship are immediate. So you could lose your home. If you've got children, especially older boys, you can't go in a refuge with the older boys. And, the women are sent away and they're given a room in the middle of nowhere where they don't know anyone. They lose their friends, could lose their job. All these losses are immediate. And the gains that people say, like you can have your freedom, you can have choices, they're so long term and so far ahead that they can't even think about it while they're feeling anxious and all of those feelings. And one thing we don't talk about is leaving a relationship, a domestic abusive relationship. That's the most dangerous time, not actually when you're living in it. To leave is the most dangerous time.
I've heard that too. Why is that?
3 women a week are killed from leaving a domestic relationship because it's all about power and control. And if you leave, you've taken away all their power. So if anybody does want to leave a relationship, it's really important that they do it safely and go and speak to an IDFA and do a proper safety plan and have a proper risk assessment.
Go and speak to a what? Sorry, if the
IDFA, the Independent Domestic Violence Advocate, or the Onstop Shop.
Inspector Domestic Violence Advocate, IDFA. I'm going to pop that on the screen.
Yeah. And they can be found at the Onstop Shop on a Wednesday.
That's in Sutton. That's in Sutton, but yeah.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah, find an IDFA in your area and they can help you.
Yeah, and call up the Women's Centre as well.
So I think the message that I would want people to take away from this conversation is there is hope. What you're watching is living proof of 2 wonderful women who've turned the healing corner and now doing amazing work. And it might be very dark at the moment, but there is always light. There is help out there, and you can ultimately turn things around and be empowered to do so and to learn the tools. But first, to do that, you need awareness of what's going on, and to do that, you need the safe space to be able to sit there and process and not be judged and feel like you're normal and feel like you're not the only one and not isolated. All of which you're providing, which is just incredible. So thank you. From a fairly normal bloke, thank you so much for the work you're doing, ladies. I hope we meet in person one day. When we go off air, I'm going to give you an email address to send that information to, because there's another radio station I work for that might be able to help promote your stuff, because it's a community-based event and you're right bang in the area. So I will certainly give you that. So don't disconnect immediately if you don't mind. Sutton Women's Centre, 0208 661 1991. Men's Advice Line, 0808 801 0327. It's about a 70-30 ratio of abuse. We were talking about 70% male onto female, but 30% female onto male might be higher than most people believe. I think a lot of people think it's 99.1. It's not. And the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, 0808 2000 247. That's 0808 2000 247. Bright Sky UK is something that looks like a weather app on your phone where you can keep notes of everything that's going on that shouldn't be in your relationship. And because it's clever, it looks like a weather app. So they think you're just looking up the weather when actually you're keeping a record, which is necessary for evidence if coercive control is proven.
And what I would say in family court, that is used as evidence because it's family court is different to civil court and it's done on a balance of probability. So having all of that information to hand is really useful.
Yeah, I mean, not many people are going to download an app and make up a load of lies, are they? I mean, it's a hell of a lot of work, you know. And then IDVA, Independent Domestic Violence Advocate.
Yeah,
advocate or advisor.
Advisor. Okay. Well, all I can say is thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Nadia, also for setting up this this interview, and indeed for making me aware of your work. And so thank you very, very much indeed, Kerry Flynn and Lisanne Barton-White. It's been absolutely lovely to speak to you. If you stay on when I disconnect you, and we'll have a little chat off air, and I'll give you that email address. In the meantime, just to let you know, thank you, ladies. It's been great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And Russ is back on. He was going to be here today, actually, but he hasn't shown up. Russ is back on Friday with Phil Dave, Screen. I can never say that. Screen Queen, Chantal Ricards, and Jonathan Baz, theatre critic. And I'll be back on Monday as well. But in the meantime, another really enlightening midday show. Next week, we're hopefully talking to Jay Saunders, who is involved in stand-up comedy for mental health. All to do with an army charity that's helping ex-army veterans, or army veterans, not ex-veterans. Always going to be a veteran, aren't they? Veterans heal through stand-up comedy, healing PTSD, and the work that they're doing for these people that just, you know, virtually gave their life to protect us, and we didn't really pay them back very much. But this army charity is doing great work, and he is making great progress. So I really look forward to talking to him next week. In the meantime, Russ and the crew will see you Friday. Time for me to say love you, hug you, squeeze.